as it is entertaining. Welcome to Pleasure Pulse, your weekly guide to the world of sex education. Join Roma every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. exclusively on Zolized Radio 96.1 FM. It's the perfect way to spice up your midweek routine and get answers to all your burning questions. Whether you're looking for relationship advice or curious about the art of intimacy, Roma's got you covered. Pleasure Pulse, every Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Only on Zolized Radio 96.1 FM. Don't miss out. Your sex education journey starts this Tuesday with Roma as your guide.
It works even better for your business.
This is my land, my island, our home. The climate has changed, it's becoming strange. We have to come together to keep her forever resilient and strong. We need slow civilization for its rehabilitation. Come together as a nation for drought and flood mitigation. Development with policies and plans. Let's change our ways, protect our lands. Get involved, every child, woman and man. Island resilience has got the plan. This is my land, my island, our home. It's time to come together to keep her forever resilient and strong.
Island Resilience, promoting a climate of change. The Climate Change Adaptation and Sustainable Land Management Initiative of the OECS Commission, funded by the European Union.
Welcome back to Pleasure Pulse. You're tuned into ZIZ with your host, Roma Richardson. And I'm so happy to be back here this evening and have you all joining me for another conversation on everything or anything sex-related. This evening and this month, actually, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I kind of wanted to focus our conversations this month on that topic and within that realm. I know some of you might be saying, but we're supposed to be talking about pleasure. What sexual violence got to do with it? That's a very good question. And the simple answer is that for people to experience optimum pleasure and optimum sexual health, there has to be an absence of violence. So wherever violence is present, it threatens or undermines people's sexual pleasure and their sexual health and well-being. So I'm actually very, enthused to have this conversation tonight about sexual violence and the police, where the police fit in terms of prosecuting and dealing with survivors of sexual violence, how they handle those cases, how people can seek justice. So I will introduce, or I'll allow my guest to introduce herself. As usual, I tell people, say who you are and whatever you want people to know about you. And we were just talking about how you're from Half-Ridge, so maybe that's something you want them to know.
Good night to all the listeners. I am Concy Rogers, a Sergeant of Police in the Royal St. Christopher Navy's Police Force.
Thank you, and welcome to Pleasure Pulse again. So if you're a Pleasure Pulse follower, you might recognize the voice or the face. Sergeant Rogers has been here before, and she's, I think, always very willing to come on with me, which I so very appreciate, because it's sometimes very difficult to find folks who are brave and bold and comfortable enough to come and talk on public national radio about sex and sex-related issues. So we can just start the conversation. So what would you say counts in our law as sexual violence? I know we have a Sexual Offences Act, but what are the things that you prosecute under the banner of sexual violence?
Okay, first, I must let you know that we do not have sexual violence in our law. We have a number of sexual offenses which can be found in the Offences Against the Person Act, Chapter 4.21, and the Criminal Law Amendment Act, Chapter 4.05. Some of these offenses are indecent assault, rape, incest, unlawful carnal knowledge. And we do not have sexual violence or Sexual Offences Act. We have sexual offences, but they are found under the Offences Against a Person Act and the Criminal Law Amendment Act.
So unlike in other countries and other jurisdictions that might have specific laws or legislation for sexual violence or sexual offenses, ours is covered in broader law. Okay, that's an interesting point to note, and we'll come back to them. Can you repeat the laws again for anybody who might be interested in going and reading them for themselves?
Offences Against the Person Act, which is Chapter 4.21, and the Criminal Law Amendment Act, Chapter 4.05.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think you mentioned spousal rape.
No.
Because we don't have any law that necessarily covers spousal rape.
We have rape.
We have rape. So, and we were talking before the show began about the domestic violence and domestic and sexual violence protocol that deals with response and so on, and how it might be related to cover specifically sexual violence that is accompanied or that is part of domestic violence cases. So that is part of violence committed by intimate partners, so people that you're in a relationship with. So is that something that would cover spousal rape?
Well, the domestic and sexual violence complaint and response protocol. This protocol was developed with the support of the PAHO, which is the Pan American Health Organization, and the United Nations Development Fund. It was developed for women. The Department of Gender Affairs has the responsibility for the protocol, which functions as a key to agencies involved in service provision. So we have the Domestic Violence Act. We have the Department of Gender Affairs, the Special Victim Unit, Legal Aid, Social Services, the Counseling Unit. All of these units work together to deal with these sort of complaints.
Yeah. So ideally, we should have had somebody here from all of those agencies tonight to speak to what they do. But we'll restrict it to what the police's role is in all of this. But I think it's interesting too, like that spousal rape is not specified as a thing. And there are lots of groups and lots of bodies and persons that are not covered in our law under what counts as rape and who can be raped. So, you know, those are things, conversations to be had in the future. Okay, so let's get straight into the process for reporting cases related to sexual violence or rape.
Okay. Persons can go to or call the nearest police station and make the report. The police will take the report, and depending on the circumstances, they will respond and secure the scene for the investigators. They will protect the victim, issue a medical form, and refer the case to the Special Victim Unit, who will respond and take over the investigation. When I say depending on the circumstances, I meant, for example, if someone visit a police station and report a rape that took place in January of last year, I would not expect the police to go and secure that scene. Reason being, that incident took place over a year ago, and chances are that it would have already been contaminated.
Yeah.
So instead, they will refer that case to the Special Victim Unit, and we will do our investigation, and this will involve visiting that scene. If the victim is a child, it can be reported to the school, the guidance counselor, the head teacher, or any teacher, and that report will be referred to the Probation and Child Protection Services and the police. The parent of the child should also notify the police if a report of a sexual nature come to their attention. If, for example, the report is made to a doctor or a nurse, they are mandated to call the police. So once these reports come to light, they should be reported.
Okay, and when you say a child, you mean under what age?
A juvenile, under 18.
Under 18. Okay. So let's maybe, can you expound on some of those stages in the process a little bit more? So you come and report it to, first of all, is there a statute of limitations, as in if you were sexually assaulted or raped 5 years ago, can you still report it to the police?
Yes, you can. There is no statute of limitation.
Okay, there is no statute of limitation. So if something happened to you in childhood, you can still come and report it. That's very good to know.
Yes.
Okay, so you come and report it to the police and they turn it over to SVU. Do you all refer people to get administered rape kits, or is that something that you all do on your own? Is that something that is done at all?
Yes, we will explain to the victim everything what will happen, and we will tell them the purpose. We have the rape kits, so we will schedule an appointment with the district medical doctor for whichever area the incident took place.
Okay.
And then the doctor will tell us where to meet them for the medical examination. We will go with the rape kit, and the doctor will conduct the medical examination, collect all the evidence that is there, and we will secure that kit to send to the lab.
Okay.
Next step, we will collect whatever exhibit we can at the time, the person clothing that they are wearing. We will visit the scene. As I say, it all depends on when it happened.
Right.
Because sometimes if it is a late case where something happened like a year or two ago, we will not try to do everything like the same night. But if the rape happens tonight, we have to visit the scene tonight, collect all the evidence. We have to get that person medically examined tonight. So it depends on when the incident took place. Certain things has to be done as soon as possible. So then we will make sure that the person is comfortable after the medical exam. Then they could go and take a bath. And if that person is in a good frame of mind and can give the statement, no problem, we'll take the statement. If the person is not in a good frame of mind to give the statement, we will schedule it for the next day. Because we want to get that statement while all the facts are fresh in the person's mind.
Okay. I thank you for sharing those steps. I think that, sometimes conversations that you have with people, or sometimes you see it in the media, how sexual assault sometimes plays out, right? Like different examples. So you mentioned things like, after you collect the evidence, the person can do things like take a shower. So you would advise then, if folks have unfortunately been sexually assaulted, that they kind of report as early as possible without like removing things that might turn out to be evidence?
Yes, that is very, very important to report incidents of rape as soon as possible, because the longer the person stayed to report it, the time elapsed between there, we could lose pertinent evidence which will enable us to prove our case. So it is very important to report it as soon as possible so that we could check for physical evidence, which are marks of struggle and stuff like that. We collect trace evidence. And if you stay too long to report it, a lot of these things are already being lost.
Okay. Can you talk a bit about like the court part of it in the process. So like, you know, the police collects the evidence, and then what happens after you collect the evidence, the statement, you have all of the information to make a case.
Okay, after the investigation is completed, then we prepare our file and we submit it for court action.
Mm-hmm.
The court set the date for the trial. After that file left the police, we can say when the case gonna try. We have to wait on the court to set a date for the trial.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and you don't really at that point either like have a lot of say in what happened. It kind of turns over to the director of public prosecution's office.
Exactly.
Okay, and which is why we're also trying to get a lawyer on who could talk to that part of things. But maybe in the future we'll have someone for a second part to this conversation. So we did like touch on the need for people to report as soon as possible. But we both know, you from your line of work and me from my, you know, academic background, that there are things that limit people's reporting. What are some of those things that might prevent people from reporting a case of rape?
They do not want their friends or family to know that they were raped. Sometimes they blame it on themselves. Sometimes they fear of discrimination, what the public gonna say when they find out that they are a victim of rape. Sometimes they keep it to themselves because they do not know who to trust. They do not know who to speak to about it. And sometimes they are threatened by the perpetrator, and they are fearful for their lives, so they don't want to report it.
Okay. And these are all things that you've seen, of course, in your work.
Yes.
I was actually reading a report today, all of those things that you mentioned, and, you know, the embarrassment, I think, that is sometimes characteristic of experiences of violence. I think a lot of people, you know, feel like it's like it shouldn't have been me, and like why me, like what about me made me a victim of a crime like this. It's, as you said, you know, fear of reprisal or fear of future violence from the perpetrator. It's sometimes, you know, especially if you're in a relationship with the person, and it could be an intimate relationship, or it could be a family member, you know, it could be an adult around you, a guardian, a caregiver. And sometimes there's dependence on that person, whether it's economic dependence or emotional dependence. And of course, I feel like there's still a lot of stigma. There's there's that self-blame, of course. And, you know, we obviously want to make it clear to everyone that, like, you are not at fault, you know, it like you did nothing for this to happen to you. But I feel like we are also sometimes very unkind to survivors of violence, and depending on who the survivor is and who the perpetrator is, like it adjusts how we respond to the case, right? Like it's almost as if we believe some people are deserving of violence, and at the same time we believe that some people could never perpetrate violence, right? And all of this just leads to violence continuing, because if especially perpetrators feel untouchable, it's likely
They
you know
will continue,
going to happen again. So like as a society we just need to do better at believing and supporting survivors of sexual violence. And I think especially even for like children, listen, like talking about childhood sexual abuse and sexual violence is just so heartbreaking, because I feel like a lot of us know children. A lot of us have heard of children. A lot of us feel like, you know, especially when we start to talk about girls and like, oh, they're fast and they seduced a 12-year-old, seduced a 44-year-old adult, and how we really make some children believe that they would never be believed and that the violence they experience is just a part of life. And then, you know, I think like some people are just concerned about the judicial process and how long it takes, how it might expose them to folks, whether or not they will get justice and be believed, right? Because there's that re-victimizing thing. So those are some extended or additional issues that limit people's reporting. Let's take a break there. I need a breath. And then we will come back and continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
Tune in for Policing with You, a half-hour radio program every Thursday morning at 9:15 on ZIZ Radio. Join host as he focuses on crime, factors contributing to criminal activity, crime prevention, and how the community can assist the police in reducing crime. It's Policing with You every Thursday morning at 9:15 on ZIZ Radio. Join us.
Join us on ZIZ TV for Youth Lounge with Sniper, a talk show on vital topics such as tourism, entrepreneurship, education, religion, sex education, and mental health, featuring experts from St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean region. Tune in live on the first and third Wednesday of every month at 8:30 p.m. on ZIZ TV.
To Pleasure Pulse. Tonight we're having maybe a more somber topic. We're talking about sexual violence and the police and the role that the police play in bringing justice or that justice journey for survivors of violence. And where we stopped off was, you know, talking about the need for honest conversations, especially around childhood or child sexual abuse. And I feel like from the busmen to the pastors to the teachers, the principals, the other church leaders, like the coaches, the guides, just we just like have a society. I think we normally like naturally feel like children are not whole human beings and people, but it's the way that we also don't aggressively discourage preying and predatory relationships with children that really bothers me, because I think part of it too, like part of this broader conversation on sexual violence is, well, first of all, and I'll just say, right, we live in patriarchal societies where women and girls are devalued. But aside from that, it is how we only think about sexual violence as like a moment. Like it occurs and then it ends and there's nothing that happens after that. For some people, we think of it as like a rite of passage, like the mother went through it, the grandmother went through it, so the daughter had to go through it. Every generation in the house experienced it at the hands of the same person, so therefore it's only natural for it to happen. But it's the way that we don't connect it to other issues that show up or that manifest in our societies. So like when we talk about crime oftentimes, our crime and violence, oftentimes you're talking about gun violence. We're not talking necessarily about sexual violence, about domestic violence, about the violence that women and girls largely, and boys, experience. And we're not tracking the effects of that violence on their, not just their, present lives, but their future lives and what they can achieve. And part of the issue too with, when we're talking about the court cases and the fear of coming forward even, is sometimes like what happens when you do come forward. So in our last conversation, Sergeant, you and I talked about perverting the course of justice, right? And you shared an example of that where sometimes, it is reported to the police and then someone is offered cash, and sometimes it's not even the survivor. Sometimes it's the survivor's parent or grandparent that is offered and receives cash. Can we talk about that? Because I learned that, perverting the course of justice is a real crime and a real thing that can be prosecuted, but only if you have a witness. So do you have a lot of cases like that where people do come forward, people want to come forward, but there's something like that preventing them?
Yes, we have a number of cases like that where you find that there's a matter under investigation, or someone was arrested and charged for a crime, and then somebody, maybe a family friend or somebody else who is close to the perpetrator, will go and offer them money, goods, or services which is to hinder the case from going to the court process. And when someone does something like this, they can be charged for an attempt to pervert the course of justice, because what they're actually doing is causing obstruction to justice. Sometimes the victim really want her matter to go before the court, but then sometimes this person might be annoying them so much. I could give you this amount of money, just call the amount that you want, and then if somebody genuinely want the case to go before the court, they will not accept any money, any goods, or any services to drop that matter, especially if they know that they're telling the truth. So sometimes they get you to get the person to accept the money or the offer, and sometimes they don't get you. But once this is reported to the police will do investigation and they can bring a charge against that person. And as I said, yes, we have some cases and there are some other persons to be charged for an attempt to pervert the course of justice.
Can you say off the top of your head like what the penalties are for that? Okay. No. So I'll get that information and share it with my guests. But from your experience, like, what has been the consequence of things like that? Like, I think you mentioned the last time, like, someone accepted some funds but didn't even get all of the funds.
Yes.
But also I think there's like the mental, emotional toll of that, because you so
okay. Yes. I had a matter one time. It was an unlawful carnal knowledge case, and the child mother came to me and asked me how much I think she should collect to make up the case. I tell her the police don't have anything to do with that. I already did my part. So I went overseas on training, and when I came back, I met her, and she said they made up the case for $10,000, but she only received 8. I said, so what you did with the money? She said she spent some and she banked some. So I don't know if she found out where the other 2,000 went, but she said she only got 8. So I tell her the police has nothing to do with that. So people accept money all the time. But
That's just...
is it?
I mean, So when I was in school, I remember that there was this conversation once about a mother who had 2 sons, 2 boy children, and she essentially used to allow them to go over to this person's house, even though she sensed and she realized that the person was sexually assaulting them. But the things that she had received, like in terms of favors, material, possessions, and we were talking about this, right, during the break, how, especially if you're talking about intra-family violence, how reporting can be perceived as placing very real risks to things like the financial survival of the home, or the emotional survival or well-being of a partner, if it's their partner who is committing the violence. So, like in that case of the mother and her 2 sons, it was really shocking to hear about, but it was also like, because like, you know, people have conversations about like social determinants of health and how poverty and discrimination and things like that affect people's well-being. So how unfortunate it is to have to think about the reality of poverty placing people in positions where they feel like they have no choice but to endure what they're experiencing, because it is the thing, it is the person that guarantees their livelihoods. So my next question like relates to this, because there's like the mental aspect of, you know, experiencing violence, because I don't know if everybody knows, I think we say it kind of casually, right? Like that violence begets violence. Violence is a cycle. So children who experience or witness violence are more likely to perpetrate violence in adulthood, right? So that's something to think about too, right? How we are actually creating the predators and the perpetrators by inflicting violence upon them. But in terms of like people's very real material needs for survival that they often put above everything else, how do the police like work to ensure people's comfort, safety, and protection when they report cases like this? And I know you said like you work with gender and probation and stuff, so if you can touch on those, you can also bring them in, but you can tell me how police does that.
You see, a lot of times children are being sexually molested in the homes, and they talk to the parent, the mother, and the mother, oftentimes the mother don't believe. Sometimes the mother go as fast to say, when they lock up your father, who gonna pay the house rent? Who gonna support you? Only your father working, you know, and stuff like that. And then that child has to live with this for a very long time. And sometimes the child turn out to be somebody who like have a low self-esteem, because the child will figure, well, if my father could have sex with me, that means I could give anybody who I want. And you find sometimes this child just, anybody tell her, oh, you look nice, I like you, she's ready to have sex with them. Whether she know the person and she don't know them, people she met online, she will organize to meet them face to face just to have sex. All because it started in the home, and nothing was done about it. And so sometimes when these children come adult, they might get a boyfriend, and then they still, cannot relate to that boyfriend in the proper way because they keep remembering when the father had sex with them and nothing was done. So sometimes it's really have a long-lasting effect on these children, and these things are very, very traumatic. And so sometimes it is very important if these reports come for these children to get counseling to cope with it as well. So that is why when we get these reports, we always refer them to Probation and Child Protection Services, and they are the ones who will organize the counseling sessions for the victims. Sometimes they have to remove them from the home as well.
Okay. And let's say it's an adult who reports. How does the police help? Because you can't necessarily like refer them to probation and protection services. So to whom do you refer adult survivors of sexual violence? And like what support like do you point them in the direction of?
We refer them to counseling at the counseling unit. And sometimes if they want to relocate, we collaborate with gender affairs, and they will find a temporary location. Sometimes you find some faith-based organizations or non-governmental organization will also assist with that regard.
Okay. Do you all provide, witness protection? Do you all provide witness protection?
Yes, we do.
Okay, obviously we're not going to give details about, but it's good to know that there is that option as well. And is it SVU exclusively that deals with sexual violence cases?
Yes, the SVU.
Okay, so if you go to the police and you share it at the front desk, they will channel you to SVU. And is there an SVU branch in every police, or is that police station?
There's one in St. Kitts and one in Nevis.
Okay, so you referred to just like the broad, general SVU.
Yes.
Okay, because I know like sometimes people talk about police, and I was in a gender sensitivity training with some police a few years ago. And it was about gender sensitivity, right? Like being mindful of certain stereotypes and beliefs or biases that might show up in how we treat with different victims who are reporting. So for example, we laugh a lot when men talk about their experiences of domestic violence or sexual violence, because we don't believe it's something that can happen. And so sometimes people say that, even when they go to police and report, like sometimes, they're laughed at. So it's obviously, I know you don't.
No, we don't do that.
You do that. So I just wanted you to give some assurances to the public that, the police is ready and able to support them in whatever cases they need to bring forward.
I don't know if something like that still happens, but with training and education, the police officers are much better now to take reports of sexual offenses from both male and female victims. And yes, we get reports from male victims. Just the other day we had a male reported another male for indecently assaulting him. So the males are coming forward with their report, and they can make the report to the station, and if a police officer acts unprofessionally, when they go to make the report, you know, they can always report that officer to the Office of Professional Standard.
Okay. So do you call the police and ask to be transferred there, or how does that work? This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
You go to the police station and you tell them that you want to report a police officer.
Okay.
And they will transfer that report to the Office of Professional Standard, who will investigate your report.
Okay, so the police is doing a lot of work in terms of ensuring client comfort and safety, because the last thing everyone wants is for people to be re-victimized, right? Like you want to ensure that you're coming into a safe environment where you can feel protected. Okay, let's take a short break here and we're winding down. So yeah, we'll take a short break and come right back.
This message is for every business owner in St. Kitts and Nevis. Jumpstart your business and set yourself apart from your competitors with an advertising solution from ZIZ Radio, ZIZ Television, or Big Wave. The Advertising Solutions Department at ZIZ prides itself on providing client-focused advertising solutions that make sense for all local businesses. Don't use the excuse that you can't afford to advertise. Call us at 465-2621. We will sit with you, discover your needs, and design a solution that fits your budget. Advertising works, and with ZIZ, it works even better for your business.
Welcome back to Pleasure Pulse. You're tuned into ZIZ online, on Facebook, YouTube, on radio. Of course, I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and I'm joined in studio by Sergeant Rogers, and we've been talking about sexual violence and the police. And during the break, you know, I was telling Sergeant Rogers that it might be, it could be helpful for folks to know where to find them. But before that, I know you wanted to touch a bit on consent, so we could talk about that.
Okay. A female under the age of 16 cannot give consent to any form of sexual contact or activity. 16 is the legal age of consent in the Federation of St. Kitts Nevis. A victim's lack of consent is a crucial element of rape. The consent must be clear and not forced or giving the victim liquor to drink to drunken or excite them. That will not be a true consent if that is done. Very important to note that a woman, not a juvenile, a woman can give consent and take back her consent. So, if a man fails to withdraw his penis following a consented penetration, that will be rape. I advise all men to stop when a woman says stop. Stop can only mean stop. And if you continue, that will be committing an offense. The slightest degree of penetration constitutes the offense of rape. That is enough to prove sexual intercourse, the slightest degree of penetration. So that is just a word of caution. You might say a juvenile was the aggressor. She came on to you and she always messaging you, calling you, coming by your place. That does not give you the right to have sexual intercourse with a juvenile. I find sometimes the juveniles are in the uniform when adult male has sexual intercourse with them. So if they're in the uniform, you must know that they're a school child.
Yeah.
So there is no excuse to say, oh, if she come on to me or if she tell me she want to have sex. I mean, you know better. So do better. Why you going to have sex with a juvenile and the next thing you facing a lawful carnal knowledge charge or something, a rape charge.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, consent is the foundation of all sexual activity.
Exactly.
So I do think, and I think Sergeant would probably agree, that our law has some expanding and growing to do to cover the range of experiences that people actually, let me not phrase it like that. To cover the range of violence that exists.
Yes.
But what you just described, I think, was very helpful in knowing and also like highlight some of those areas in which we can grow. So in terms of like where people can find the department, and I was also telling Sergeant, like sometimes even before people can come and report a specific crime, like name the crime, sometimes a lot of people who have experienced violence aren't even sure like of what happened to them, right? And they're not even sure like where that falls in the law and what it counts as. So sometimes there has to be like just that conversation to say like something happened to me, I didn't feel good about it, like what was it? And you were sharing like what SVU does and where to find them. So can you share some more about that?
Okay, the SVU is located at Needmos. It is between Ricardo's building place and the White Castle Snacket. It is directly in front of the building where people can go and pay their water bill.
Okay.
It's easy to find. We are not in the station, so persons do not have to fear going into the station, and people see them going into the station and wondering, oh, if she was raped or if her boyfriend beat her again. We are all the way up there, so you cannot say you don't want to go in the station. We are not in the station. We are not a station. We are just a unit in the police force. And when you come up there to make report, nobody going to laugh at you or insult you. I believe that some persons really do not know when they have been violated. Education is very, very important, and that is why shows like these are needed more often, because even with domestic violence, some persons will be getting abused since the night of their marriage, and they thought that it is love. They're getting licks over and over and over, physically get cuts and bruises, and it took them years to find out that that is not love. That is abuse. Same thing, some people are being raped over and over and over, and they don't know that they are being raped. Because if you don't give somebody consent to have sex with you, I mean, they rape you unless it is a legal marriage, because a husband cannot rape his wife in a legal marriage, but there are some instances where a husband can rape his wife. But
that's
as
something
I
that needs to change. I just needed to say that. We need to address that. But
as
continue.
I say, it all boils down to education. Sometimes we think that persons know stuff, and they really don't know. They really do not know how to deal with certain things. And if you feel like something is happening to you and it doesn't feel right, I think you should speak to somebody and tell them what is going on, so that they could tell you exactly that it is wrong, it is a crime, and you should report it. So our phone number is 662-7077. That's the phone number for the Special Victim Unit, the cell phone number. And our extension is 467-3252 or 4252. As well as you could call the Bastia Police Station, 465-2241, and ask to be transferred to the Special Victim Unit. But if you have a report of a sexual nature and you report it to any of the district station, they will take the report and then they will refer it to us to do the investigations.
Okay. And sorry, just one more question. I read somewhere that the majority of staff at SVU are women. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a staff of 8. We have 7 women and 1 man.
Okay. And it's intentional, right, that this staff is majority women?
Not really.
Not really.
We had another male there, but he went on transfer. I'm hoping we'll get him back in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Because we want more males in the department.
Okay. So it's just working on general sensitivity and ensuring that everyone there is trained to deal with whoever shows up with whatever issue that they have. Okay. So thank you for sharing those numbers and for sharing the locations. We've had Sergeant Rogers on with us talking about the police's role in dealing with responding to sexual violence crimes, and so on. Someone just messaged me about spousal rape not being a thing in law. So a conversation to be had in the future for sure, which does not mean, right, like this conversation was not an encouragement or a justification or support or anything like that, because as Sergeant said, there are some cases and there are probably some other areas in which you can be prosecuted, right? So it's just that the law has to update to reflect the realities of this society. So I just want to thank you and ask if you have any final words before I end the conversation.
I just want to say to the listening audience, try hard to, especially to the male, when these young girls coming onto you, try your best to leave them alone. Unless they reach the age of 16 years, they cannot give consent. It doesn't make any sense to have sex with a juvenile and know that you could be facing a life sentence, jail. So use common sense. Let common sense prevail. You know better, do better. The age of consent is 16, not 12, not 10. Not 13, 16. When they reach 16, they could say yes to any form of sexual contact. But better still, they are an adult when they reach 18.
Yeah.
So, do the right thing. Even when nobody is looking at you, do the right thing. You know the right thing, do the right thing. Leave them alone. Let them grow and become women. Let them enjoy their juvenile days, the young girls, the childhood. There are a lot of women out there who will want a boyfriend.
Yeah, your age, right.
Exactly. And leave the young children them alone.
And of course, there are a lot of women predators as well. So
yes, and there are a lot of men out there who want a girlfriend.
So please, let us, this is a whole lot of conversation too, because I know somebody listening to this might say, okay, I just have to wait until the person is 18 or 16 or whatever. And I don't think that necessarily avoids or is different to the predatory and pedophiliac kinds of relationship that we're seeing. So it doesn't help if you say, okay, I see this 12-year-old that I'm interested in, that I'm gonna wait till they're 20. Like, yeah, but that's another conversation for another time.
Exactly.
And a longer conversation too. But this evening, I'm happy that Sergeant Rogers was able to join me and share some information about the role that police is playing and the work that police is doing internally, you know, to increase accountability, to be good responders and good purveyors of justice, to support survivors and support the communities around them. So with that, I will leave you all. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Pleasure Pulse. It was a pleasure to be here, and I will see you all next Tuesday. Remember that Pleasure Pulse is a safe, inclusive space where no question is too big, or no topic is too big or too small. So we will meet again next Tuesday. Good night. Stay safe.